Hello and welcome back to Outsider Nation. I'm your host, Lindsay McPhail.
And I'm CJ McPhail.
The cutest co-host ever. Hey, we're back and we're so excited to kick off a new season of Outsider Nation, talking about one of our favorite movies of all times.
By far.
So good. The Goonies. So today we're talking about how living like a Goonie will get you unstuck. Why are we talking about this?
Because we are rounding the corner into the last 3 months of the year, and there's no better time than now to make a decision to end your year well. And if you're watching this at some other time, there's no better time to start now to make a better decision because I don't know when you're going to watch this. But the fact is, you have a decision to make. We have a decision to make. And when we choose to make the decision we're going to talk about today, everything begins to shift positively. And we're going to use Goonies as our inspiration.
Because like the wild, exciting party couple we are, we sat on the couch on Friday night with our 10-year-old sickie and we watched the Goonies. And I thought, there are some great lessons in here. And let's tie it out, put it into the podcast that we were already thinking about. So 3 bullet points on how living like a Goonie. Now, I have to say, if you haven't seen the Goonies, I'll pray for you and go stream that baby.
Yeah.
There's no reason. There's no reason that you shouldn't have already watched this. But just in case, we're going to kind of recap some of our favorite parts just to get you going. So, number one way, kind of chronologically in the story, but also I think one of the most important ways to get unstuck that goes with the Goonies. Don't let someone else's story keep you from yours. So CJ came up with this. It's so good because we're talking about when the kids get down in the tunnel, they're running from the Fratellis, but they have this map. So it's kind of twofold. They're getting away from the bad guys, but there's also this promise of a potential pirate treasure that they're going toward. And they get to Chester Copperpot, but they didn't know it was him. It was this dead guy, this skeleton that was crushed under a boulder. And so my favorite Goonie, Mikey, reaches down to find out who he is. He gets his wallet and they're please don't be Chester Copperpot, because they thought if this guy is the expert and he died this close to the entrance of the cave, we have no hope. So Mikey opens the wallet and it was Chester Copperpot. So how does this tie to the idea of don't let someone else's story keep you from yours?
So above ground in the movie, the parents of all the kids that live in the Goondocks, as they call it in the movie, are all struggling financially. And their homes are about to be demolished to make way for, I think, a golf course or development. But below ground in this cave where they're now starting their adventure, they realize it's their chance to tell their story and to create and write their own adventure. And that's what they choose. They could have lent into, I don't know. Whatever. They could have leaned into their parents' story, which at that time was very negative, very scary, very heavy, or they could have rewritten their own. And that's the same chance, or same choice, I should say, that we have to make pretty much every day, but certainly right now in the areas that where you're hesitating. There's those areas in life where you want to go for it. You have this idea, this dream, this goal, this target, whatever you want to call it, but you're hesitating. Lindsay and I want to be, and our company wants to be, the inspiration to get you through your hesitation, to get you past the hesitation.
Yeah, and I think too, they could have looked at this guy who was the expert, the leading expert in One-Eyed Willie's treasure. And they could have totally been if this guy didn't make it past here, then we won't either. And they could have let that direct what they did next. And they didn't. And I think sometimes we look at the people in our lives who are experts and wherever we're going. And we think, well, if they didn't do that, then I could never do that. Or if they did it this way, then that's how I should do it. And we were actually just in Chicago for such a fun franchise conference with just so much wisdom in the room. And so we went to these breakout sessions. They were called mastermind groups, and they separated us, which was terrifying, but so good because we get into these groups with other franchisees and different experts in the franchise industry. And I mean, they're saying phrases where I'm like incognito Googling, like, I don't know what that means. I did it like every 10 minutes because I did not understand a lot of what they were saying. And so they're talking about processes and how much they've made and their huge budgets for advertising. And I can just feel myself like just shrinking and realizing that we are hitting our franchising goals, not doing things the way the experts do, not because we were like trying to buck the system. We're just doing it the way we know how, or the way we think is best. And I think sometimes if we only do what the experts do, or only like don't dare to go further or do things different, it siphons our creativity. And it keeps us stuck, because then it puts in an operating system like in our brains that says we can only go this far, or we can only do this much. And so we're spinning our wheels, because the way the experts or the leaders or the people who've gone in front of us do it, that's not how we're supposed to do it.
Yeah. The fact that somebody else in your life is further down the road than you doesn't give you the right to allow their story to stop you, because you have to start your story too. At some point, whoever they are, whoever you're comparing yourself to, and let's be honest, that's really what we're talking about. We're talking about comparing, which is so horrifically dangerous in every way. And disastrous and detrimental and all the other words that start with a D. I think I'm out of D words, but it's bad. It's so bad.
Because it steals who you are and what you have to offer. And like, you could take your industry or your passion or whatever it is, just by being you and doing what you think, you could take things so much farther than trying to pretend you're someone else.
And just by starting, just by taking the risk, which we talk about a lot, puts you in the top 10%, maybe 5% of all people in the world, because almost no one even does that. So now you're in an elite group of people. So that's your story. We're elite. And that comparison then can still happen, but it can happen in context where you can just say what I just said. They're just further down the road. I'm not as far down that path as there, but I am on a path, and my path is as valuable as theirs. And if I could get them to go back and tell the stories of their first weeks, months, or years, they would have a similar story. So now that's my story. That's the way you can approach this. Instead of looking at somebody that's 10 or 20 or 30 years beyond you and saying, I'm never going to be that. That's ridiculous. And it's just a fear tactic. It's just a way for you to hide, whether you realize you're hiding or not.
That's good.
We hide a lot. I sat at a table because, as Lindsay said, we were in different groups, and collectively, the question was asked: how many dollars in sales, how much annual revenue have you guys had so far this year? And just my small group was well over $100 million in sales. Let's just say that that's not where we are.
That was intimidating.
That's not where we are yet. But keep in mind, several of these brands, which were great, I don't think any of them were less than 10 years old. Some of them were 20 plus years old. And it makes sense that they'd be at that place with their revenue. When we just got legal to franchise in February or March, that's not where we are right now. So I was able then, knowing that and having the confidence to still say, this is who we are, and this is our brand. One of the girls in my group, babe, if you remember, I won't use her name, but she actually came up to me, and I'm not saying this to be self-serving, I'm saying this to make a point. She came up to both Lindsay and I towards the end of the conference and said, some of the things, CJ, that you said about your brand and the passion you have and what you believe made it worth my entry fee into this conference. She goes, I'm going to walk away with some things that you said that I've never heard before, and I'm going to take to our brand, and we're going to kill it for the rest of the year. And I just thought, that's cool. Not because it's a toot my own horn sort of thing at all, but because I was able to own where I was and just start from there. That still changed people.
I mean, that conference, the way it was set up, I just loved it. It wasn't set on any like one speaker. It was that we got to glean from so many other people, and dang, it was good. Okay.
Don't let someone else's story keep you from yours, which is comparison.
Recap.
And number two, I like to recap. I'm a teacher.
Okay, I'm ready. I'm ready to go. So
here it goes. Choose adventure over safety. Number 2, choose adventure over safety. In the Goonies, that is the theme. That's what they constantly did. They were terrified. They were afraid. They were up against villains and guns and history and booby traps and tunnels and water, booty traps, and things that could have ended their life at any one point in time. But they still marched forward. And in the end, they found the treasure, and they had enough money through jewels and things to not have the boondocks be destroyed and give their parents
okay, but
their
there's
dreams.
one like pivotal point, and it's my favorite part of the movie, where they get to the wishing well. They've already been like through the plumbing things. Now listen, I just have to tell you, if you're from Oregon and you've never seen this movie, you don't get to say you're an Oregonian. But okay, we're going back. We're going back. So they finally get to this place where they have a choice. They could ride up the wishing well bucket and go back to ordinary, go back to safety. There would be nobody shooting at them. There would be no booby traps or falling through floors or anything like that. So they could go to safety, or they could see what's out there and they could choose adventure. And I love it because they chose adventure. And in this part, Andy, one of the girls, puts the Letterman jacket of the jerk Troy, who's up there like wheeling the bucket up. And he yells, "Andy, you Goonie." I love that line so much. I made it like an Instagram post out of it a couple years ago. And our manager at the time, Erica, she was like, "What does that even mean?" But it means something to me because it's this turning point where they decided we're going to go for adventure over safety. And I think, especially if you're an adult, if you're like in the thick of work, career, kids, sports, like all of the things, it feels like if you're going to deviate from safety, if you're going to deviate from the norm, there has to be a plan spelled out, a step by step by step. And I know what's going to happen for 5 years. When in reality, that need for the next step spelled out, that need for safety keeps us stuck. When we can say yes to adventure and not know what that necessarily means, when we just say yes, then it's like starts to like unravel this path that we never knew was there in the first place. And we can't know is there if we don't just say yes. But it's that need for safety that keeps us in the hamster wheel, and it keeps us just like it's Groundhog's Day.
Yep, it's true. And when you choose adventure, understand, which is what Andy, to Lindsay's point, experienced. Andy is a girl, and her boyfriend, I don't remember his name. Troy, sorry, babe. Troy.
He's not an Oregonian.
I actually was not born in Oregon, so there you go.
Come on.
When they went through that, because she chose adventure, she was an immediate threat to anyone that hadn't. So remember that. When you choose adventure, you threaten the system, and you threaten everyone who hasn't made that choice. I think, this is my opinion, and I think our experience is, the reason people are threatened is because they so desperately want to do the same thing. They just know they're afraid. So be a threat, which is a different way to say, be a Goonie.
There you go.
And go for it.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. So,
okay. So the recap is, don't let someone else's story keep you from yours, and choose adventure over safety. What's the last one, babe?
Okay. Last one. Number 3, pick your team.
Yeah.
Choose the people that are going to be on this journey with you. And I think sometimes you think the people who are closest to you or the people that you love the most are going to be in the front row cheering you on, like constantly giving you pep talks when it's hard. Yep. And the thing that I love about the Goonies is they're outsiders in so many ways, but you have this group of boys, they're friends. But then they're not the Goonies. Like the Goonies is the whole group, the older brother's love interest, her best friend. And it's all these people who are so different, who come together and they use their strengths. They're so different, but they all bring something to the game that helps them get to the pirate ship.
Even Chunk, who is my favorite character in Goonies, who is, understandably by his name, overweight. But he develops his friendship with what you think might be the villain in the beginning of the movie. It ends up being one of the heroes. And without the relationship that Chunk had developed, the whole thing wouldn't have happened. So pick your team. One of the points in here is you can't do it by yourself. So stop trying.
Yeah.
I think a
good.
lot of you have tried to do things by yourself and it hasn't worked, and you decided your new story is, see, I tried, it didn't work. Hold on. Pick a team. And the team will, who's most supportive for you in this point in your life may surprise you. It may not be your mom or dad or brother or sister or whoever. It may be somebody else, maybe a high school teacher. It might be a neighbor that you from 3 towns ago that you moved away from 10 years ago, but you go back to that person and they are like one of your biggest cheerleaders. You could come up with the wildest, craziest, most harebrained idea, and they're somehow going to smile and say, I believe in you, let's go.
But here's the thing, because we both, just in the last couple of months, we have our team, we have our family and our friends, but we both just kind of made like, I don't know, we call ours a round table. I have a round table of women business owners. You have a guys group you call the 3 or whatever, and you're all business owners. But so it's more from a business perspective. But I wouldn't say that everyone in there, and even in my life, is people who will just cheer, like a general cheer, like, yeah, you go. Like, you have to have a cheerleader, but you also have to have someone who will shoot it to you straight, whether you take that in and do something with it or not. But you got to have someone who will help you grow, someone who will call you on your crap, someone who will challenge you to go beyond what you think is like a big like stretch goal. And they're like, no, you think it's this, but it's actually this, because you were created for something that is going to like rock the foundation of the world. Like when we are surrounded and when we are that for other people and we surround ourselves with that, you have no chance but to like not be stuck. You cannot be stuck when you are surrounded with people who are proactively pouring into your life and you're pouring into theirs, pushing you farther than you think you can go.
Yeah. And remember, an adventure by default is you admitting up front and us telling you up front, you don't know all the next steps. You just know you need to take this one. Because you take that one and then you meet somebody, or you figure out something new about yourself, or you feel inspired in a way that you haven't in forever, if not ever. And suddenly then you see the next step. That's the adventure. So for those of you who are kind of like me and a little bit like Lindsay, we both have this in us a little bit where we would love to know what the next step is. We want like the next 5 steps. That's not how these lives of adventure work. And that's not how it worked in Goonies. That's not how it works in real life. But if you'll take the next step, what you'll find is the life that you long for. The life that when you lay your head down on your pillows, we like to say a lot, and you know it's just you, and you're saying to yourself, there has to be more. Maybe a part of this more is you taking this step or making this choice, first of all, of adventure, to be like a Goonie. But then second of all, to go do those things that you've always longed for, whatever that is. Lindsay and I can be accused of a lot of things right now, and some of it is going to be true. However, what you cannot accurately accuse us of is not living a life fully alive. We are fully alive. We are all senses firing at all times, and it doesn't always make for joy. That's a lie about adventure, but it does make for fulfillment. And fun, and definitely adventure.
I thought you were going to use
our
another
boys,
F word.
No, but it's
disappointing.
Oh, but our boys, let me say in closing this up, our boys are watching us, and whoever's in your life is watching you. So this no longer is just about you. You have the opportunity to motivate, encourage, inspire people that are watching, and you may not know who's watching, and you might. No question, our boys are changed and will be changed fundamentally, positively, because of the adventure that we're currently on. And
I think when we make the intentional effort or just decision to say, my life isn't even bad, but I know I'm stuck because there's something in me where I feel irritable, where I feel just like you can't even put something to it. Maybe you're bored. Maybe you're, really, you found yourself being negative or judgmental, like way more than normal. Like those are clues you're stuck. Like, so if you're stuck, maybe you don't do all 3 of the things that we've suggested right off the bat. Maybe you choose one thing. The sad thing is, I think so many of us go through life, and we did this for years and years and years, where you don't even know you're stuck. You don't even know that there is more out there for you, for your family, for your life, for the people that you will have an impact on. And so I think the first step, one, is to know you're stuck and really paying attention to who you are and what is holding you up. And when you make the decision to say, I don't know what it's going to look like, but I know I want something more, it gets messy. It gets challenging. You have to have conversations with yourself and other people that maybe you have been avoiding for years. You have to step out of the norm. You have to be creative. You have to be curious. You have to say, like, I don't know how this is going to end up. 2 years ago, when we sold everything and we moved to South Carolina, knowing no one, except our realtors, we didn't know how it was going to look. But I would say if we had to make a guess, it would have looked way different than what we're living right now. But I wouldn't trade what we're living right now for anything, because it has been a brutal year. It has been a brutal year. But dang, it's been so good. There's been so much good that has been built in us because of the choices we've made. And to say it might be safer, it might be more comfortable to live like this life that we were on, but we knew inside that we couldn't. So it's not always like, I don't know, unicorns pooping rainbows, but it's still amazing.
It's true.
Yeah.
And we want that for you.
Yeah.
What's going to matter is you wanting it for you enough that you're willing to just take a step. And maybe it's picking your team, as Lindsay said. It's not all three at the same time. So maybe right now you just need to identify, like, who is in my corner with any crazy harebrained idea, no matter what, because they just love me. Who is that person for you? Have you identified that person or those people? Have you said that out loud? As Lindsay said, we both have groups that we meet with weekly or regularly anyway, that are those people for us.
We should do a podcast on picking your team.
That would be fun. And then choose adventure. I mean, choose adventure over safety. Safety is so yesterday. It is so boring.
It is so last year.
It is so last year. But adventure is right where you want to be, whether you realize it right now or not. And don't let someone else's story keep you from yours. Remember, comparing is death. Comparison is cancer. Your journey is that. It's yours. It's your journey. And where you start, it doesn't matter what someone else is, or how far down the line there are. Or if you're sitting at a table of 8 and collectively they represent over 100 million in sales, and you're not even fractionally you can't even fractionally compare yourself to that. I mean, come on. But you still have you still have your story, and you still have the ability to do these things, and then watch your life improve in ways you could have only imagined weeks earlier, months earlier, whatever the case is. That's what we wish for you. That's why we're with you today. We're with you to encourage you, to inspire you, to keep going.
All right. So we have a whole lineup of new shows coming, although I wanted to put, like, the title that popped in my head was Don't Pick Your Nose, Pick Your Team. That might be because I'm a mom of 4 boys.
Nice.
We'll work on the title. But I think that will be, let's do that next week. Let's talk about what it means to pick your team.
All right.
This podcast is brought to you by Outsider Coffee, cutest roaster in the whole wide world.
Thanks,
but really, we are excited. We just launched our October menu yesterday. We got some good drinks on there, not just pumpkin. You guys who are anti-PSL, like, you got a fire. We're opposites in this. I could live on pumpkin spice. Anyway, yeah, that's why we're doing this. We're leveraging what we have to make a difference in your life, and we're grateful for Outsider for letting us do this.
Yeah. Okay. We see you. That's the bottom line. We see you. We have been where you are if you're not where we are yet, and we're not judging. It's time to go. Can't wait to hear your story.
Okay, we'll see you next week. So